Throughout history, freethinkers have outraged the religious with their wacky ideas about the virtues of free speech, reason, and of course, eating babies. Now, God is dying, and it's time to dispose of his remains. From the pits of hell, Satan sends two puppets of the imperialist West and the Zionist Jews against God, Islam, and tiny kittens to bring you their propaganda and conspire for a new world order. This is Secular Jihadists for a Muslim Enlightenment with Ali Rizvi and Ibrahim Abdallah.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Secular Jihadists for a Muslim Enlightenment. My name is Ali Rizvi. I'm the author of The Atheist Muslim, A Journey from Religion to Reason. And with me is Ibrahim Abdallah, who you all know is the founder of Atheist Republic, the largest online platform in the world for atheists, actually. And it's got 1.8 million people and growing. And he's also the author of a great book called Why There Is No God, which is constantly in the top 10 on Amazon in the atheism section. So Armin, hello.
Hi.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that was a terrible hello. I know. I need to figure out a way to do this.
We do this so much, it's awkward, like as if we're trying to make it exciting, but we talk so much that it's not exciting for us. So
it's not fake. Exciting? Why would you say that? It's like super exciting. I could push doors open with my nipples right now. Anyway, maybe I should have held back there. No filter today. So I'm going to introduce our guest. Our guest is this guy's a friend of mine from a very long time ago. He's he's actually my favorite ex-Muslim activist. So I find him super, super inspiring. And he was a founder of a group called Muslimish, which is a place for both ex-Muslims and questioning Muslims to come together in a secure environment and have a dialogue. And at their first conference, that I spoke at least, which was in New York in June, I think, 2016. He did this speech where he just held up a Quran, and we're going to put a link to the speech in the description. And he just held up a Quran and he said, "This is Islam." He's like, people will tell you all these other things are Islam. This is not Islam. But this is Islam. He said it. We were all looking over our shoulders to make sure that nobody's blowing this place up. But it was really wild. It was a super exciting speech. It was super inspiring, and we were all totally riled up. So, Ibrahim Abdallah, welcome to the Secular Jihadists. I'm really glad to have you here, man. So how do you pronounce it? Is it Kifak or Kefak?
Ibrahim Abdallah, or Abdullah in Arabic, like my Egyptian.
No, how do you say, how are you? Was it Kefak or Kefak?
Zayak.
Zayak.
Kefak is Lebanese. In Egypt, we say Zayak.
Zayak. Okay. Well, in Saudi Arabia, it was Kef Halaka.
Kef Halak. Yeah, it's a little different from each country, but I know it all now. I have friends from almost every single Muslim country in the world, which I didn't have when I was Muslim.
Yeah. So in the past, one of the episodes that we really enjoyed that Armin and I did was with Noura Embabi, who was the president of Muslimish, your organization. And we had a really good dialogue. We heard a little bit about the organization, but so we heard what the organization kind of stands for from her, which is cool. But with you, I want to kind of go beyond that and just ask how you came up with the idea, because you're one of the founders of it. So how did that come about? How did the idea come to you? What inspired you to put it together?
Well, there was just no such thing. There was no place for people who left Islam or had issues with Islam to discuss these ideas. I grew up in Egypt. So I moved to the United States when I was about 23, 24. So I really had almost, and I used to travel during that time, but I spent my formative years in Egypt, and this conversation is basically against the law. There are certain things you can't talk about, and one of them is to criticize religion. So after moving to the United States and after living here for a while, once I changed my opinion about I stopped being religious. I stopped being superstitious. I changed my mind about the divine intervention theory, basically, that like there's no divine intervention in the world. And I just, I couldn't talk to anyone about it. When I started hinting, didn't even like come out right away. When I started hinting to my friends that I grew up with, I was faced with a lot of like, first subtle threatening and pushback. And, I'm not someone who was easily intimidated. So I usually, when someone pushes back against me, I push harder. And that just ended up that I ended up telling people that I don't agree with these ideas. I don't believe these ideas anymore. I think they're wrong. And I lost all my network, basically. I lost my original network that I grew up with of friends and family. Well, not all family, but a lot of, friends and family. There are some people that I'm still in touch with, but the big majority of people stopped talking to me, basically. They started an active boycott campaign to like not talk to me. And I was okay. I mean, I lived in a different country. It didn't really affect me, but I didn't have this of friends, and I kind of needed that. I missed that, I guess. And once I met someone else, it really started. Once I met someone else by chance who was from India, and he, like me, didn't stopped believing in the divine nature of the Quran and Islam. And once we met each other, we couldn't stop talking. Like we met and we started talking. We had like a very engaging conversation. It lasted hours, and it made me want to meet others. It made me want to experience that again. And I learned a lot from this conversation. And I felt that, well, these people, we need to learn from each other. We need to talk to each other. We need to be able to have a space where we present our ideas, and eventually being able to promote these ideas among others and attract people who have similar tendencies, similar ideas, similar thoughts, to create a front, basically, or to create some sort of counter force to the majority conservative Muslim community. It's majority conservative. I mean, even if people are not conservative, there's always the one conservative guy in each Muslim group that keeps the group on the straight path. And, he's self-appointed usually, and everybody, nobody challenges this guy. And that guy ruins every single Muslim group that I've seen. There's, because I've tried before I started Muslimish, I've tried to go to like Muslim groups, and there was always, even if it had intelligent people, there was always some like really religious guy, and whenever that guy spoke, nobody challenged him. They just they accepted his the authority that he gave himself, and nobody challenged him. And I just wanted to find a space where people can meet and have conversation without that influence, without that conservative voice being there, threatening people subtly and telling them, well, you shouldn't say this because you don't understand what the consequences are for this. And without so, and having that space now, that because we've had that space for a while now, and I've grown with that space, it helped me personally grow, and it helped me. Yeah.
Can I ask you a question? So when you're holding up the Quran, right? And you're telling, I saw the video that Ali mentioned at the beginning, and you're saying this is Islam, right? Yes. I wanted, what made you feel to say that? Like, why do you think that you have to mention that the Quran represents Islam? And also, what would you say to people that Islam is more than just the Quran? Islam is also a lot of hadith. So it's the Sunnah also. Also, Islam is it's a community, it's a culture, it's an identity. It's an identity. So how would you respond to that?
That's true. Okay, well, there are different, Islam as a faith, Islam as a system of belief. It really is. It stands on one leg, and that's the Quran. And in my opinion, I'm a very black and white kind of guy. I'm not a very subtle personality. I am. So to me, at least my understanding when I was Muslim, because I grew up Muslim, but I did not, let me start by saying that when one of my earliest memories of thinking about the issue of religion and creation is.
Sorry, I was saying that Armin. Yeah, can you say? Ibrahim. Can you say that again? One of your first things of.
One of the first memories that I remember about me thinking of the issue of philosophy and religion is that because to me, as a child growing up, I thought that was the most important question to answer. Because why are we here? To me, it was like, well, if we don't understand why we're here and what are we doing and what is the purpose, then everything else is just, minutia. It's little things that we are, that life just we get busy with these small things and we just keep going on everyday business without thinking about really why do we do the things we do. And if we understanding where the world comes from and our purpose in the world is, I think, very important for each person individually to come up with that for themselves, or to try to come up with an idea of what their existence means.
So how does that relate to why the Islam is only just the Quran and nothing more?
It relates because I didn't want to be Muslim simply because growing up in Egypt, I had we were exposed to other religions, like Christianity, for example, is the other big religion in Egypt. And I had a Christian friend. And the idea that I could have been Christian if my parents were Christian I was very aware of that thought, that I could have very simply become Christian if my parents were Christian. And then would I be defending Christianity and saying that it's the right religion and that Islam is wrong if my parents were Christian? Probably. So I was aware of that from an early age. And I wanted to convince myself that I'm Muslim because Islam is correct, not because my parents are Muslim. So to me, I questioned Christianity, and I questioned that, I started studying Christianity, and it seemed very wrong to me. It was very easily dismissed. Versus Islam, which brings me to your question. I'm sorry it took me so long to get there. But it's that for me, Islam is the only religion that has solid evidence, or at least that's what I thought, is that it had the Quran. It had like a physical thing that we can examine and test. And that's Islam's miracle. Islam itself claims that other prophets had came before Muhammad, and they brought their miracles. Like Moses, he had magic. He turned his stick into a snake. And Jesus, he turned water into wine and walked on water. But these were only miracles that people around who've seen them can see, can get the effect or get the benefit of seeing the miracle. It's not something that people in later generations or in different, locations around the world can test to test the truth of the claim that this book is from the creator of the universe. Like with Quran, for example. Quran is Muhammad's miracle. It's very simple in my head. Muhammad, came into his people and said, I'm prophet. They say, no, you're not a prophet. Prove you're a prophet. And he said, this is the proof. The proof is Quran. Muhammad claimed that the proof that he's a prophet was the Quran. So this is a piece of evidence that we have today that all Muslims agree on, that Sunnah and Shia agree on. Sunnah and Shia don't agree on Hadith. They agree on the Quran. Everybody agrees. And it's basically, if you're Muslim, you have to believe that Quran is the creation from a divine being. Otherwise, you're not Muslim, basically, in my mind, at least.
Yeah, right. I think that's sorry, I know. I was going to say, I think that's the main idea, that regardless of sect or faction throughout the Muslim world, throughout all of the different Islamic sort of factions, the only thing that everybody agrees on is the Quran. So the Sunni have a source of hadith that is different. The Shia have a source of hadith that comes from the family of Muhammad, which is different from what the Sunnis go for, which is the Sahaba. all of the Ismailis have their spiritual leader, the Aga Khan. The Ahmadis have their own. All of these different sects have their own leader. But the only thing that ties all of them, that everybody agrees, is the common denominator. Is the Quran. I think that's one of the points that you made.
Actually, there's three things I think. I think there's three things that they all agree on. One is Allah is God. Second, and Muhammad is the prophet of God. And the third thing is that the Quran is a direct word of God. And I think it's not no true Scotsman's fallacy if you say anybody that doesn't agree with these things is not a Muslim, because this is the most inclusive definition of a Muslim. If you remove this, then there is no such thing as Muslim. I think that then if there is no definition for the word Muslim, then it doesn't mean anything at all. And it's not if I say if you don't drink enough, you're not a Scotsman, then that's a no true Scotsman's fallacy. But if I say if you have never been born in Scotland, and if your parents are not Scottish, and if you haven't been to Scotland, then you're not a Scottish, then that's not a no true Scotsman fallacy, right? So there needs to be a definition for the word Muslim. And I think believing in the word Quran as the word of direct word of God, I've talked to some of the most accepting Muslims, Ahmadi Muslims, or that want the umbrella to be as large as possible, and even they agree that if you don't believe in the Quran as a direct word of God, then you're not a Muslim, right? So that's why I think you're right to say.
Let me tell you something. That this is my definition, but I've met a lot of Muslims who call themselves Muslims, but they don't think the Quran is the word of God. Mm-hmm. I've met these people.
Me too, especially in the last 10 years.
I've met these people. So I know they, like, just because you and I have this definition that's actually closer to the Daesh definition of who a Muslim is. Our definition is closer to Daesh. But, these people,
just for the listeners who don't know, Daesh is the Arabic word for ISIS.
Sorry, say that again.
I don't like to say ISIS. I don't like to call it ISIS.
Okay. Can you clarify what you're saying? What is closer to Daesh? To ISIS?
Our opinion, the opinion that if you don't, that if you have to believe that Allah is the creator of the universe, Muhammad is the prophet, and the Quran is the word of the universe. That is the extremist definition of who a Muslim is.
That's not an extremist.
And you and I agree with that definition.
I know, but actually
what I'm saying is,
that's not an extremist definition.
What I'm saying is there are some people who consider themselves Muslim, who might not, fulfill all these three things.
I know, but first, can I respond to that? Because first of all, that's not the extremist definition of Muslim. That's actually the most inclusive definition of a Muslim. Extremist definition of Muslims include people that say that if you drink alcohol, you're not a Muslim. If you don't pray, you're not a Muslim. If you don't fast during Ramadan, you're not a Muslim. If you don't cover your head as a woman, you're not a Muslim. There's more extreme people have a huge list of things that you have to qualify for you to be a Muslim. This definition of these three is the most inclusive definition of a Muslim. Second of all,
because there are people who are Muslim.
Doesn't matter what people say. Doesn't matter what people. Doesn't matter how people. No. Let me clarify. If somebody comes to me and says, "I believe in God, and I identify as an atheist," and I tell them, you could do whatever the fuck you want, but you can't, and you could call yourself an atheist, but you can't change the definition of the word atheist. The rest of us are going to still use the word atheist for people that don't believe in God. If somebody comes and says, I think Jesus was not God, and he was just a guy with good messages, but I identify as a Christian, I'm going to tell them they can do that. We can never stop some people from identifying as what they want, right? I could identify as a helicopter. That doesn't change the definition of a helicopter, okay? But I think that if you remove the most basic requirements for the word for somebody to define for the definition of the word Muslim, if you just remove all of that, then the word Muslim means nothing at all. Mm-hmm. If a word can mean anything, it means nothing.
So here's Armin. Here's where I kind of So this is weird because I actually do agree with that. I think that the word Muslim has a definition, and that definition is someone who believes in God, the Quran, and Muhammad, right? So generally, and it mainly like just really the Quran pre-assumes that God is the creator of the universe, Allah, and Muhammad is the messenger. So basically, if they believe in the Quran, they're Muslim. Now here's the thing where it comes to a contextual definition, where people now, like as opposed to 1400 years ago, now you have people who are assuming the word Muslim as an identity, right? So whereas you have one definition of Muslim, or the real definition of Muslim, which is someone who believes in Islam, but now you have a lot of people, and we can't get away from this, is we've got a lot of people who say that they're Muslim, but they believe the Quran is divinely inspired. They believe that, okay, God didn't write it, Muhammad wrote it, but it's still divinely inspired. So I still believe in most of the messages. And a lot of these people, they consider themselves Muslim. And there's another thing that I think, Ibrahim, when we did that panel together...
When you say a lot, you're misrepresenting... It's a bit of a misrepresentation of the numbers. Mm-hmm. I mean, we are people that are actively looking for these extreme cases, and anybody that says they're a Muslim and they think maybe the Quran is not the direct word of God, this is such a fringe group of minority of Muslims that even like how people say terrorists are a fringe minority of Muslims, which is true. This is even a fraction of that number.
No, right? That right now, if you take a cross section of the present, you're right now. But if
you're talking even in Western countries, you guys are looking at Muslims in Western countries, right?
You're right. Our it's a very tiny minority.
Yes, it's a whole different.
Go back
if you're talking about the Middle East.
Yeah, but if you go back in time, and I just want to give another analog, is that if you look at the way that the Torah was revealed, or the Torah was revealed to Moses at Mount Sinai, at the tabernacle, by God himself. It was a literal word of God, and the vast majority of Jews for centuries and centuries and centuries believed that this was a literal word of God. And then later now, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years later, you have people like Reformed Jews like, no, it's not written by God, or we're still going to call ourselves Jews. Some are like, okay, well, we're not religious Jews. And others like, no, we are religious Jews, but like the Reformed Jews, we believe, but at the same time, we don't think it's... All right. So what I'm saying is, let me just finish the thought, is that even though at this point in time, there's a lot of people who don't believe this, it is a possibility. Just the way that religions evolve, the same thing with Christianity, just the way that they evolve is over time, it is very possible for people to start saying that, okay, this is a divinely inspired book. And a lot of young Muslims I see here in North America, even the religious ones, at least in North America, the case overseas. But North America, many of them say, yeah, it's divinely inspired. I have problems with the Quran. There's some flaws in it.
In hundreds of thousands of years, in hundreds or a few thousand years, once people manage to change the definition of Muslim, then we'll use that definition of Muslim. But current language is by usage, right? If a few group of people come and change, they're like, oh, I'm going to call cats dogs, and I'm going to call dogs cats. That's not going to make the definitions different.
I agree with you. When it comes to the linguistic... If they start
a campaign and all of a sudden a whole bunch of people agree to switch the words together, and they get maybe in 100 years, then okay, we'll adopt their definitions because they managed to get other people on board. Currently, cats are cats and dogs are dogs. People have tried to do this with the word God as well, because a lot of people that stopped believing in God, they weren't ready to let go of God. So they're like, oh, God is just love. God is energy. God is this and that. And like, okay, we don't need the word God, because energy, or we already have a word for it. It's called energy. Love is, or we already have a word for it. It's called love. You're just confusing the shit out of people, because when other people use the word God, they're talking about the conscious creator of the universe. So you guys are not helping the communication. You're just making it. You're just adding to the number of people that call themselves believers, when you don't believe in a conscious creator of the universe, and you're not helping getting rid of this fucking insane idea of a conscious creator of the universe. So Muslims that think they're Muslims but don't believe that this fucking psychotic book could be written by any loving creature that created us. If they say like, well, I'm still going to call myself a Muslim, but I don't think maybe this book is horrible, so maybe it wasn't written. You're not helping, right? Because you're helping.
Yes, they are.
No, they're not.
They're not.
So here's the problem.
Yeah.
They're absolutely helping. I mean, say what you want, but these people are intelligent people. They're doing the right thing. They want to keep something they like about it.
I didn't say they're stupid.
I didn't say they can't call themselves Muslims.
No, I didn't say they can't.
They can call themselves whatever they want. And
that's the thing, Armin. The question isn't whether they are Muslims according to the word or not. The question is, can they call themselves Muslims?
Of course. I started by saying we can't force them to call themselves what we want them to.
Exactly. So
we don't want to force them to do anything.
Of course.
They're our allies.
Of course. So,
they are the best people that we can work with.
No.
So let's not start by saying that you don't call yourself that. They could call themselves whatever they want.
No, when I disagree with somebody, people are saying, who are you to force people? And like, wait, when did my disagreement mean that I'm going to force them to do otherwise?
Yeah, so here's
saying you can't call yourself that because you're not that.
No, I started from the very beginning that saying they can, and I disagree with them. Just because I disagree with them, that doesn't mean that I could.
So Armin, here's a question.
Of calling yourself a Muslim.
If we got to the point, you're saying that when we get to the point where 100 years, whatever, or maybe it depends on when, the definition of Muslim actually changes to people who just identify as Muslims in terms of identity and not necessarily did more of a cherry pick belief, kind of like Christianity, kind of like most people identify as Christians or most people who identify as Jews. Now, you're saying when it gets to that point, we can change that definition. Wouldn't it be a good thing? Doesn't it help if we do get to that point and change the definition?
No, that's actually slowing the process of killing Islam.
I know, but this is one place where Armin and I disagree as well. I think that I do believe in the whole step-by-step approach. I feel like what happens is that if there's a space where people are going to listen to people like you and Armin and me, I think that if there's a space that people can step into, right, that helps them step into that place where they're listening to views like ours, right? And if they're keeping one foot in the door, I think that I don't think it's linguistically correct. I agree with you on that, but I don't think it's unhelpful. I actually think that it is helpful. I think that a lot of these efforts that people have, that they are helpful. So
I want to respond to that, but I want to let our guests speak more. So I'm gonna
yeah.
Okay, so.
Yeah, we always get into this
No, that's cool. But I forgot what we were talking about. So we were saying what?
Oh, we were talking about.
You're saying you're making the argument that they are it is helpful. But so and we should let them call themselves a Muslim. But I want to say I never said that we shouldn't let them. So but you also made the argument that it's helpful for them to call themselves Muslims. So why do you think that?
Which I agree with too. I think it is helpful, but go ahead.
Why do I think that? Because why do I think that? Because I care about the reality of people's lives, and the reality is there will always be people who will want to call themselves Muslim for one reason or another. So what I care about is what they actually do. So if I can encourage more humanistic behavior to be part of Islam, that will make Islam better, and it will make people's lives better. And that's what I care.
But would you like people to ultimately get to the point where they give it up, and where, like as Armin is saying, where we actually kill Islam? But do you feel like this is a necessary step towards it, or do you think we should go directly towards?
You can't go directly towards atheism. It's just you can think you want to do that. It's not.
I never said directly, but I don't think that's the right step. Just to clear, but go on.
Huge parts of the world. First we have to think of two different. North America is different than the Middle East and South Asia, but. I feel like maybe we'll come to a point in North America, the Muslim community will be completely secular, and I feel we're already close to that. But if you want to see change happen in Egypt, in Iran, in Pakistan, in Somalia, you cannot go there with an atheist agenda. It has to come from a Muslim ground. It has to be presented, at least at the initial phases, as something that has roots in Islam.
I would say it's good inside within the Muslim community. So that includes, even if it's a Muslim
within the Muslim community, within the Muslim heritage, because yes, but that heritage is, and that thought has always been part of Muslim civilization. It's always been persecuted and shut down, and we are at a point now where we are living in an age of communication, and we can reach people without physically being there, which allows for the spread of ideas that were before dangerous to talk about in the physical world. Mm-hmm. It gives us an opportunity. Yeah, go ahead.
No. I was going to say there's one other aspect to this that I think that. And I've said this before on this podcast too, that I think different people respond to different kinds of things. Some people are sort of more emotionally leaning. Some people have more rational mindsets, and then they use that as a way to navigate their lives. And I used to think, I actually still think, I think that the rational mindset actually helps. I think if you present people with a good argument, then they will listen, and they will be sort of helpless to listen to something that's reasonable. But on the other hand, right, there is another aspect, especially considering Islam, right? And one of the, and even fundamentalist evangelical Christianity, I've talked to a lot of people who come from those backgrounds as well. And it's something that you alluded to, Ibrahim, before, is when you said that, when you change your mind about this stuff and you didn't believe this, you lost people in your family. You lost your childhood. You lost a lot of things that you knew, a lot of the community. So there is a very real cost to this that extends actually beyond just rationally changing your mind. And human beings, there's a huge part of them that is irrational as well, and that is not necessarily susceptible to being convinced by facts alone.
Can I?
I mean, I want you to respond to this. I just wanted to finish what I was saying. So I think that, there are many times I have talked to people, and I do, my approach is obviously, I tell them that I think it's false. Ibrahim, you do the same thing. Armin, you do the same thing. That we think it's false. We're not trying to convince people that, no, you can interpret it differently. And that's what we do. But there is a part of it, I think, that has to acknowledge that some people are not as privileged as say, someone like me, who is able to retain his family and all his relationships, and everybody in me is open-minded enough to accept who I am, and I can very liberally and very, very openly say that, okay, no, I just want to reject this thing altogether, and I think this is the way to do it, which I do think is the right way. But there are other people for whom, right, that family bond, the community bond, all those other costs of letting go are very valuable. So for them, a gradual approach may work better. So I do think that we have to account for different kinds of people. This is something that we've talked about a lot.
Right. Yeah, but okay, so great. Okay, so first of all, with regards to the humanist values and secular values that we want to promote, I don't have to agree with a Muslim for me to help to support their work for humanist values and secular. For not even the Muslims that I don't think they're Muslims, the ones that don't think that the Quran is the direct word of God. The people that do think that the Quran is the direct word of God, many of them, which that makes them a Muslim, many of them do fight for humanist values, do fight for secular values. I think there's a contradiction with those and Islam, but it doesn't matter as long as they are fighting for humanist values, as long as they're fighting for secular values, for women's rights, for gay rights. I will support them. That support is not conditional on me agreeing with them on what Islam or Muslim is. I can continue.
We're not saying that.
I know, but that was what Ibrahim said. Is like, there are a lot of these people are fighting for humanist values and secular values and these values and that values. I'm saying, yeah, and we support them. Just because I disagree with them on what Islam is and Muslim is, that doesn't mean that I'm not going to be there for them when they need our help, when we're fighting for the same goals. We have a disagreement on what these words mean, and we could debate that. And while we have that disagreement, not only liberal Muslims or moderate Muslims, conservative Muslims sometimes have goals that align with us, right? Conservative Muslims in the United States want secularism because secularism helps minorities. right? So if conservative Muslims in the United States or Canada fighting for secularism, we have a common goal with them. So we might even work with conservative Muslims, right? Just because
I don't.
Okay, I will.
You don't expand on that, Ibrahim. What were you saying? You don't what?
I don't work with conservatives. I don't work with conservative Muslims or conservative Christians or conservative Jews. I don't work with them.
Why?
How come?
I just don't like them as people.
Yeah.
And I don't like to work with them. And I like to work with secular Jews, especially. I think that we have a lot in common with them. But I just and it really it started with because if I get someone who is a conservative Muslim, I try to point them to a more modern or more progressive group. Maybe that will help them, but I don't work with them personally. I don't like to work with conservative people.
I have a question for you, Ibrahim. What if I come to you and say, okay, I don't think the Quran was the direct word of God. I don't think it was even written by, I think Muhammad and some other people just made it up. It was not. You know what? I actually don't even believe in Allah. I don't believe in a supreme a God. I don't like Islamic culture. I don't practice any Islamic culture. I think Muhammad was just this delusional guy. Maybe he didn't even exist. But I'm a Muslim. All right. And I've never been, I've actually never been a Muslim before, but I want to identify as a Muslim now, starting now, even though there's nothing in Islam that I relate to. There's nothing in Islam that I believe in, or is there anything about the culture I enjoy? There's nothing, but I identify as a Muslim. Is this person a Muslim?
Well, the example that you're drawing, I've never seen anything like this.
I know that.
But what I'm talking to you about, let me finish. But what I'm talking to you about is something that I've actually seen in real life.
I know.
I have met people. What you're saying is kind of like, well, why are you Muslim?
Because I want to identify as a Muslim. That's the only reason.
What makes you want to identify as a Muslim?
I just want to.
Well, so I'll give you an example of something like this, right? And we've brought it up before, the Free Zakaria example. So Free Zakaria is basically like after Donald Trump announces a ban, and Muslims are supposing. Actually, Ibrahim, remember when we did the Muslimish panel in Detroit?
Yes.
And someone asked you the same question.
And
is there anything in Islam that you like? Because you were talking about all the stuff that you don't like, and clearly we don't really like most of the stuff in Islam. But when you said at that one point, you said something like, I'm paraphrasing. You said that if Donald Trump started rounding up Muslims and putting them in concentration camps, right? In that case, you might identify as a Muslim, right? So. So that's an example.
But that's because I grew up Muslim. I was Muslim. I really, really, really believed. And it's part of my character. It's part of me. Like I still have certain tics that I can't get rid of, even after over 10 years now. I'm coming on 10 years. Next August, it'll be 10 years since I really stopped believing in the divine. Mm-hmm. And that's a long time. 10 years is a long time. I'm there's a lot of things but there's still some things that are that I still carry, that I still like, that I still enjoy, and it's because of my upbringing, and that's why it's like I feel that that could be true for anybody who had that upbringing. But if you didn't have that upbringing, and then why would you want to identify with Islam? That's why I didn't like,
but the reason why I'm coming up with hypothetical is because it's a useful way to show that there needs to be a line at some point, right? So I
understand your question.
Right.
I get it. But what I'm saying is my opinion is based on things. My opinion used to be like yours. I used to be like you. I used to think that, you know what? If you don't think that the Quran is the word of God, you're not Muslim. I don't care what you say you are.
Yeah, but that's not.
But if you don't think that this is the word of God, you're not Muslim. Which is the way that
you guys treat it as if you're insulting the person. You're not a real Muslim. That's a compliment. All right. Maybe they don't agree with the definition.
For them, what's important is how they see themselves, not how you see them.
No, I mean we can't change the definition of words because you want to identify. And by the way, the examples Ali gave, it doesn't apply because those are strategic lies. right? If I want to identify as a Muslim because I want to add to the number of Muslims in this country to protect them, that's a good idea, but that's that's a strategic move to protect your fellow human beings. That's not really changing. Let me also
I don't think it's a strategic lie.
Let me add to example. If you want to keep calling yourself a Muslim even though you're not a Muslim because you want to be part of the community that you feel a connection to, that's also a strategic misrepresentation, and it's okay. It is a misrepresentation and it's strategic and it's okay to do that, but the fact is it's a misrepresentation and it's fine to do that because you're making a strategic decision that you want to use this label to remain connected to the community, right?
So I want to bring an analogy here. Okay, so like since we're talking about this, and that there's, again, I think that there are contextual definitions of words. There's connotations of words. I mean, we have the word connotation for a reason, and there are literal definitions of words. And the word I'm going to bring up is feminism. Okay, so my view has always been that there's a definition for feminism. The definition of feminism is to believe in equality of opportunity and rights between men and women, social equality, political equality, economic equality. That's a classic definition. That means that if you are a feminist, or if you believe in that equality, you are a feminist. If you don't believe in that, you're an asshole. Okay? Now, the thing is, there's a lot of people who believe in those things, who believe in the social, political, and economic equality of women and men, but they don't identify as feminists. They say, I want to reject it, because there's all these people out there talking about gender feminism, and, if you're pro-choice...
That's a good example. They're still feminists.
Right,
They're still feminists, even if they don't use the label. If you believe in women's rights, if you believe in equality for women, even if you don't like the label of feminist, you can. It's your choice. It's your choice not to use a label, but you are a feminist.
So exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying that if you believe in that basic stuff, you're a feminist. If you don't, then you're an asshole, right? So that is my whole thing, my sort of linguistic dogma when it comes to that. However, contextually, nowadays, when you say that you're a feminist, right? And there are people who are extremely, extremely radical and irrational people in the whole feminist movement, that even some of the most hardcore feminists I know are finding themselves averse to the word, right? We have to account for that. Linguistically, it may not be right, but the definitions of these words over time evolve. The definition of Jew has evolved. So we talked to David Silverman.
Yes, over time, the Islam and Muslim, those definitions might evolve, but as of right now, it doesn't.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. Like those definitions, they do evolve. And I think when it comes to the word Muslim,
see me in 100 years, we'll see. Maybe you're right.
Not 100 years. I think a lot of times there are people who don't really care what the Quran says. Who don't really live by it, who go out, they drink, they eat bacon, they listen to
they're still Muslims. They're still even if you eat bacon, have sex before marriage, don't fast during Ramadan, you're still a Muslim. You're still you could be the shadiest Muslim in the world as long as you believe in the Quran and Muhammad and you're still a Muslim.
They haven't read the. So I think
it doesn't require you to have read the Quran for you to be a Muslim. As long as you think as long as you think this is the word of God, that's part of the definition. It doesn't mean
you're giving the example of what I'm trying to say. I'm saying that over time the definition has evolved to come to this inclusive thing, right?
This is not over time. The shahadat, when you say ashhadu anna la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadur Rasulullah, that's the most inclusive definition.
That is the most inclusive. So you could turn people into Muslim just by getting them to say that and take a shower. Okay, so that is the most inclusive definition that doesn't really include the Quran, right?
Okay, Ibrahim, get in here.
Yeah. So I want to say, you were like something you were saying, Armin, is maybe in 100 years that's what Islam is going to be, but it's not like that right now. Well, we have to start we have to start somewhere. So in 100 years, it will be like that.
Exactly, yeah.
And that's
if not Islam, then Muslims. But go on.
So I feel like we're really like stuck on one point here, which is a definition of what Muslim is. So it is important, but the one last thought I want to say about this, and let's try to move on to another subject. Why is it like, if you let's look at what is the perceived definition of what a Muslim is for someone who's like a white American. It's a terrorist. And I was saying that, I was saying that for like the majority or a big percentage of white Americans, their definition of a Muslim is a terrorist. And that's not an accurate definition either. So we need to create a counter, another like the majority of Muslims actually, at least in the United States, are very secular in nature. I would say the majority of Muslims in the United States are secular in nature. But, but we don't have, what we're missing is, and what I would like to see is a space where these secular ideas can be discussed among people of that community. So far, we haven't we don't have that space, and we're starting.
I never said secular Muslims are not Muslims. Most secular Muslims, most humanist Muslims, any Muslim believes that the Quran is the direct word of God.
All I'm saying is, there are Muslims who don't think that the Quran is the direct word of God, and they should be. And in my mind, this is this should be what comes into your head when you hear the word Muslim, not some bearded dumb piece of shit who wants to kill people for leaving Islam. We need I don't want to enhance, or I don't want to be in the column of the people who see Muslims as terrorists. I want to be in the column of people.
I don't think my definitions encourages that viewpoint.
Okay, I'm using my own words because I'm trying to explain an idea here. Is that we need to support the type of Muslim who is really, for all practical definitions, is not Muslim. They just want to call themselves that. I think we need to encourage that. And the other thing is, and I'm going to tell you one thing, that a story that happened to me that really changed how I, approach this subject, is that I was told once in one of the meetings by somebody who was Muslim, who was, I would say, one of the more conservative people within the group, but be considered very, very liberal in any, other Muslim community. But she basically told me that I made her feel like the sheikh, the imam in the masjid, because I was telling her, well, this is what it is and this is not what it is. This is Islam and this is not Islam. If you don't believe that this is the word of God, then you're not Muslim.
Okay.
And she said, she basically told me that, you're talking right now like the sheikh, the imam. And that is the last thing I want to do. That is exactly what I do, because that is the person that I want to be the opposite of.
So I have a comment. There's a comment that actually goes to what Ibrahim, what you're saying is, it's from Alex, and he's on our he's one of our patrons. So thank you, Alex, for the comment. So he's saying, if you're trying to encourage a Muslim enlightenment, wouldn't you want a more secular version of Islam where the Quran isn't necessarily the word of God and other such compromises, considering all the issues that arise out of infallibility? So I guess the question here, and I guess Armin, we're going to move on. I want to transition to a more sort of positive thing that we do kind of agree on, which is the whole enlightenment idea.
This is more fun. Talking about things we agree on.
No, we've done that for a while now. So I want to talk about this, the enlightenment aspect of it. So the idea that if people do start looking at, if there are people not people like us who just have rejected it altogether. Yeah. So I feel like we've kind of jumped the gun, or jumped from first grade to fifth grade. That sounds really elitist, but either way, it is elitist.
I think we earned it.
But see, so supposing there's some people, not everybody has the ability to jump.
Yeah, I understand the question. I'm going to respond to it very fast, and we can move to I think you bring enlightenment by being honest to people. You bring enlightenment by not playing with definition of words instead of actually being, coming up with clear definition and not playing around with it, because that will destroy the point of communication and the point of having labels for things, right? If you want to talk about God and people are just changing the definition in every sentence, that you can't really have a communication about them. You have to be honest about what is Muslim means, what Islam represents. That's how people could disagree with you. You could support people on the values that they have that you agree with, even if you disagree with them. That doesn't mean that just because you disagree with them on Islam or what a Muslim means, that doesn't mean you're alienating them, right? And Islam as an idea needs to die. And if you keep changing that definition to things that, like, imagine people like, why did we throw away Nazism? Why can't we just redefine Nazism? Nazism was such a horrible ideology that needed to die. Redefining it slows the process of it from dying. Also, just a response to sounding like an imam, I want to sound like an imam. You know why? Because I appreciate that at least imams don't believe in objective reality, right? These wishy-washy people, like everybody has their own reality, everybody has their own truth. No, everybody has their own opinion. People don't have their, just because you're passionate about a view and selling it, at least that imam guy, that guy thinks, they're completely wrong. But a lot of these conservative Muslims, at least they believe in the truth and they're fighting for the truth. They happen to believe in the wrong, something that is not true, and I could have a discussion with them. But being passionate about what you believe in and fighting for it, that's not something I see a problem with. No matter, that's not something. If people are saying, "Oh, you're sounding like a priest," or "You're sounding like an imam," and like, what do you have a problem with those imams or priests? They think that's the truth, and that's they're fighting for your soul. They care about you. They're wrong, but at least it might be coming from a position of kindness, right? I completely disagree with what they think is the truth, but the fact that they're passionate about what they think is the truth, that's not something that I see look down upon. I admire that. But
I think the passion is fine, but I mean, there's many different aspects to being an imam, right? So there's certain things I can definitely appreciate their honesty. Like, I do like talking to a lot of fundamentalist Muslims because I feel like they're a lot more honest than the moderates. But at the same time, I think that that if they are running the land, then some of those qualities can be really, really problematic.
Of course, that would be a nightmare if they were running the land. But
I think, I think we're all aligned on most of it. I think they can coexist. I think you can have a linguistic definition of Muslim, and I can say I'm not a Muslim when it comes to the ideological aspect of it. When it comes to believing Islam, I'm not a Muslim. But yeah, when it comes to an identity aspect, right? So
I have a question for moving it to something else. So Ibrahim, you said you don't like conservative Muslims, and in Muslimish, Muslims that come to Muslimish, they are mostly moderate Muslims, right? So
yes.
What if I was a conservative Muslim and I wanted to come join Muslimish? What would happen?
I would direct you to a group that is probably more geared toward. I would suggest a different group for you.
Okay.
That is more in line with what you want to achieve. Like, I would ask, what is it that you're trying to achieve? Why do you want to join the group, and what is it that you want to achieve? And I would try to send you to a place where it would help you, achieve what you want. Which is not going to be in Muslim.
So I have there's a follow-up question to that. That's Armin, and this I think is kind of interesting. So in Muslimish, what you have is you have a space where questioning Muslims and ex-Muslims can come together, right? And they can have conversations. Can you have conservative Muslims who are questioning as well, or is that
no? From my experience, I would say no.
Okay. I met a few conservative Muslims that they mentioned that they had moments of doubt. But I mean,
I just feel like for the purpose of the conversation, for us in the group, the idea is to create a space where people can exchange their thoughts and ideas that they can't discuss in a mosque, that they can't discuss in with their families.
Yeah.
Just practice uttering the words and having a conversation. Is not only therapeutic, it helps you create your own idea. It helps people understand what they actually think. When you practice putting in words your thoughts and ideas. It's a higher level of intelligence, I think, and it's an exercise that is rarely done with it, for at least in the Muslim community, because it's discouraged. It's something that has been discouraged for a very long time.
But aren't conservative Muslims the ones that need that the most?
They do need that the most. I just can't help them right now. Okay?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's... So another thing I wanted to ask you was that, and this is something that we've all been dealing with a lot, is I know, Ibrahim, you and I are actually politically kind of aligned too, especially when it comes to U.S. politics, which, I know everybody's all over the place, especially in the ex-Muslim community.
I don't know. I'm the most capitalist in the group.
Yeah. Hey, listen, we're actually quite aligned when it comes to capitalism, when it comes to sort of like free market liberalism.
Me too. So all of us, I think.
Really? Awesome. Because the group, I think the majority is more socialist.
By the way, I think we're going to lose half our patrons. Maybe we should edit this part.
No, but I guess, so one of the questions was that, what do you, and then, I brought this up, we had Sarah Haider on before, and we had other, and I brought up the same question. I'm very interested in knowing how some of the leadership of this movement thinks, and you're obviously part of the leadership, is how does this happen where you have people who say, okay, you criticize Islam, Trump criticizes Islam, you're no different to me from Trump. But we were again, I was telling David Silverman last week, when we talked to him, that you have a lot of mainstream atheist groups that are shying away from inviting ex-Muslims to their atheist conferences because they don't want to, they're liberal leaning and they don't want to be lumped in with the Islamophobia crowd. They think that, ex-Muslims are going to associate them somehow with the whole Trump thing. So, the fact that Trump is president, that there is a lot of sort of anti-Muslim sentiments and anti-Muslim hate going around. And, all of us are from Muslim families. We have Muslim friends and relatives and so on. How do you counter that? Has that damaged what you want to do? Has it encouraged you further? How has that affected you?
To be absolutely honest with you, Ali, I really don't care. I mean, I work in my mind, I just do what I want to do, and I don't give a shit what anybody else does. Mm-hmm. I'm looking at my goal, and I'm focused on my goal. And the rest of the world, they can do whatever they want. I'm going to keep doing what I want to do. And all I can control is what I do. That's the only thing I can control. I can't control what other people think. I can't control what other people do. And I don't care.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever get, I guess, unwanted support from some of the really far right? I
get rid of it very, very quickly. We get a lot of, and especially it happened in the beginning. It doesn't come anymore because I am nasty to Christians. I'm nasty to them. They never communicate with me again. Because I
want to suggest not getting rid of all these people, quote unquote, unwanted support, because I've noticed some of them change their tune if they keep following you for a while. I used to get people that say we should just nuke the Middle East and stuff like that. And after a few years of following me, now they're saying we're against Islam, not Muslims. So I noticed a little bit of a change in some of them. So if shouldn't we try to reach out to these people as well?
You can do that. I'm not going to do that.
Okay.
So what has your experience been? Why do you? What have Christians done or that have made you want to do that? Want to kind of
Well, I just it's for my peace of mind, really. Once I get because the Christians, they just want to bash Islam and they have their own shitty religion that they I just don't like that level of stupidity. You believe in a zombie God that is far worse than the Islamic God, in my opinion. At least on the idea of Islam. Islam is a superior religion to Christianity in my mind. I know a lot of people say, well, Islam is worse. it's definitely more violent, and it causes more real damage in the real world today. But on an intellectual level, it's a more intelligent religion than Christianity.
How so?
Christianity is very primitive. Like it's almost like something out of a Greek myth with the Son of God and virgin birth, and it's really stupid. I mean, it's just really, really stupid.
Yeah,
and I just can't stand it. I mean, and like, you know, the stupid cross on their chest, and like the whole thing is just pathetic. I just don't like these people.
You know, I agree with you, because when I read the Bible, it just seems like so random, and like you can't even criticize it because you're like, what the fuck?
And the whole idea of like turning the other cheek, what kind of horseshit is that? I mean, are you kidding me?
That's a capitalist, non-socialist.
I mean, if you read
fuck yourself.
Okay,
I'd kick your ass.
But you know, I kind of agree with you, but I also want to challenge you on that. I agree with you because when you read the Bible, there's just so much random shit in there. Like in the Quran, the Quran is very violent and barbaric, but you see why it made strategic sense. Like you're like, okay, I see why this is there, right? The Bible is like, what the fuck are you even talking about? Like, really cut off a woman's hand because she was defending her husband by grabbing the opponent's balls?
So crazy shit.
I have to say the Bible is definitely more entertaining.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, it's definitely more entertaining. It's more fun to quote from. I remember once I had this thing where I was trying to do, I was doing this thing called Scriptural Nugget of the Day. And I used to post like one little scriptural nugget. And I found of course, there's a lot of stupid things in the Quran. But there was no competition. Eventually, I started kind of running out of it. I'm like, okay, well, there's stuff in the Quran. This kind of sucks, but it's not funny. You know, I wanted to find funny, nonsensical stuff. And I just ran out of those things in the Quran. And the Quran's a smaller book, to be fair.
But to be fair, Islam becomes more ridiculous and becomes very competitive with the Christianity once you add the Hadith. Then it becomes a major competition.
That's a gold mine.
But, you know, to be honest, a lot of people, even conservative Muslims that I've known, people like not conservative, but conservative in, you know, in my circles, they don't, I don't know, most people don't, you know, at least have one hadith that they just like, no, this is just wrong. Like you will meet a lot of Muslims who like, when you tell them what the hadith says, like, oh, well, this is just hadith. But and that's why I like to focus on the Quran, because that's something that no one will disagree on.
Yeah, I agree. In my book too, what I did was I focused pretty much over 90% on the Quran. I mentioned a couple of hadith here and there, like when it came to abrogation, like the verses of actually that wasn't even hadith; it was the verses of Rajam that were actually taken out, but etc. But I really focused on the Quran just because you preempt that argument. Because once you start bringing the hadith into it, it's too easy a book to write.
Yeah, but also, I mean, if people, I agree with you. There's a lot of people that throw out the hadith, but they don't completely deny that there is no good hadith, right? But then once that they throw the parts that they don't like, then you could argue with them. Then how do you even know what good hadith is? And if you don't know how good hadith, then how the Quran demands you to follow the way of Muhammad? How the fuck are we supposed to do that, right? Without the hadith. But anyway, but
not everybody's gonna like try to.
I know.
You know,
be
as specific as an intellectual about this discussion as we are. Some people are just trying to live. Most people are just trying to get by.
Yeah, I understand. Care. This is why
they're gonna do what is easy and nice for them, and that's okay.
Yeah,
because it makes them happy. We shouldn't like try to stop that, because that's a losing battle.
Okay, here's the thing, Ibrahim. When we fight Islam, we're not fighting Muslims. Okay. You know that more. I'm sure more than anybody. Right?
I understand that, but I just what I want to say is I feel like let's not try to discourage people from coming up with their own Islam. Let's try to encourage that.
Okay,
because that
I don't want to go back to that argument because we moved on, but yeah.
But I mean that's something that actually I'm kind of I'm sort of in the middle on that. But I do think that it's important for people.
Let's have a live stream, Ali, me and you, about this, because I want to change you on that. But we already talked about this. But the thing is, though, do you think that maybe we see Christianity sometimes as more ridiculous because we're kind of used to some of the Quran, because we read the Quran since childhood? Because, you know, like a lot of Christians, when they hear about Scientology or Mormonism, they start laughing and they say this is ridiculous, even though they have, like, you know, talking snake and Eve coming from Adam's rib and all that bullshit. Which is, if you think about it, it's really not less ridiculous, right, compared to Scientology and Mormonism. So do you think that maybe when we're looking at Christianity and we think this is like completely ridiculous compared to Islam, even Islam is completely bullshit, we look at Christianity and think like, okay, this is just laughable. Islam makes a little bit more sense sometimes. Do you think maybe because we're more used to Islam?
Absolutely. I'm sure that is a huge factor. But I just want to say that there's just a difference between a religion like Islam and Judaism, for example, where the concept of God is kind of vague. There's this like cloud-like God versus Christianity, where there's like actually like a dude on a cross and it just looks ridiculous. It's like, the elephant in Hinduism. It's just pathetic. You can't it's an elephant with 8 hands. Like, come on.
I think that there's a thing in Islam.
No.
I see your point. There's sort of this unseen deity, and I remember like being told, because God is made of nur, which is light. Allah, the Islamic Allah, is made
No, he's not. Angels are made out of nur.
No,
God is made out of nothing.
Don't go there. God is too, like, they don't specify. I don't think
that's the point, Armin. That's, I think, the smart thing, the strategic genius of Islam, which has been deadly and it's been horrific. And I always say, I kind of say that I was like, when it comes to violent and dangerous religions, Islam is more dangerous because it's less ridiculous.
When
it comes to the more ridiculous and sort of stupid religions, then the other Abrahamic religions kind of take the cake there.
But maybe God himself, they made it so vague that it's like that's why deism is also hard to attack, because they made their God like be like almost like nothing, so you really can't make fun of it. But Islam comes with jinns, right? Islam comes with... I mean, there's so much bullshit there.
There's a lot of dumb stuff.
Islam comes with like flies having one wing that has poison on it and one wing that has a cure to that poison.
That's hadith. That's hadith.
Okay. But I mean... Another hadith is the cutting of the moon in half. Like even as a kid, I thought like, wait,
that's Quran.
Wait, no.
اقتربت الساعة وانشق القمر.
Yep.
اقتربت الساعة وانشق القمر is Quran. The moon was split. That's Quran. But the details of that is in the hadith.
Okay, so that's fucking ridiculous right there, because even as a kid, I remember thinking, how come the Chinese didn't record this? How come the Greek didn't see this? How come this is not a major event in history from everywhere around the world? Like, holy fuck, the moon was cut in half. Like, I say, even as a kid, I thought this would be recorded around the world.
As a lunar eclipse. The Mayas should have mentioned it somewhere, right?
Yeah. Ibrahim, what was that? Was that there's this verse that you talked about that had everybody in stitches? So this is another thing that Ibrahim did, was kind of, he brought out the Quran in that speech and he pulled out all of his favorite verses, and it was pretty much like a stand-up comedy show, and he didn't really have to do much anyway. He just had to kind of read them out. But there was this one where the sun settles in the mud. Like, what was that one? حتى إذا بلغ مغرب الشمس وجدها تغرب في عين حمأة. That's from Surah Al-Kahf, the cave. And that's a very popular surah. Like, that's a surah that people like to read on Fridays. Like, people like... I know a lot of people in my family that like to read Surah Al-Kahf on Friday. Yeah.
It's like a sunnah. And... But there is a story in Surah Al-Kahf about this guy, Dhul Qarnayn. Dhul Qarnayn literally means the one with the 2 horns, with with the horn like head. So like a lot of people think that's like represents Alexander the Great. But Dhul Qarnayn, it tells in the story that he went to the end of the earth and he found the sun setting in a well of hot mud. And a lot of people say, like,
it's metaphor, guys. It's just metaphor.
Yes, well, that's what I was told, that it's metaphor. That, like, because what I did is I said the same. Whatever I said in New York last year, in 2016, I said it again in Detroit in 2017, because and it helped me, and it helped me like say it better, and it helped me reply to some of the comments and feedback that I got after the New York conference in 2016, the 2016 one. And one of the things I was told is that, oh, you're taking it so literally. But shouldn't I taken it literally? Like this could have been, isn't this a good opportunity? If Quran is truly the proof, the sign from the creator of the universe.
Ibrahim, why are you discouraging people looking at this metaphorically? You're discouraging people.
I'm not discouraging, but I'm just defending my own position of, I want to see it literally. And the Quran, if it truly, here's the thing, Armin. If the Quran truly was a book from the creator of the universe, it should give me what I want and give you what you want, and give the person who wants to read it metaphorically what they want, without losing the meaning, which is, this is,
you got cut. Repeat that.
The book, you can read it 10 different times, and every time you'll understand something a little bit more, or like, and every person will something will resonate, the same word or the same sentence will resonate differently. If there's a book that is really coming from the creator of the universe, the creator of galaxies, how great would that book be? That's what I want. I want there to be a God. There is no God, but I would like there to be a God. I mean, it would be a nice idea. Of
Ibrahim, I could use your own criticism against you here, because I could be like, by saying that, you, as a Muslim, I want this Quran to be the direct. I'm a secular Muslim, and if you say that this could not be the book by the creator of the universe, you're discouraging me to be a Muslim and believe that this is the book from the creator of the universe, and you're denying me to take part, and you're discouraging me from being with you guys, because you're telling me that this book could not be from the creator of the universe.
So what I'm saying is, this is my opinion. And all I want is to be able to say my opinion freely. And, you can agree or disagree with it.
That's what I
feel that everyone...
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we're aligned.
That's good.
We're aligned. We agree on that.
Yeah.
Yes, I feel that I just want to be able to say what I think and discuss... So, and you can then you say your
so by that logic, if I come and say I don't think the definition of Muslim is this or that, if somebody says you're discouraging people, I could be like, this is just my opinion. I want to be able to say my opinion, right? So that would be.
You can say, but there's a difference. This is different than saying that you're not really Muslim.
Oh, I think Ibrahim, you're cutting out a bit.
Yeah, you're cutting out a bit. Well, more than a bit.
Okay, so let me try again. So let's say, can you hear me now, guys?
Yeah. By the way, sorry, you guys. If you don't want to go back to that topic, we said we don't want to go back to that topic.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I just want to say what I think about this. So I feel the thing that I didn't like about what you said, Armin, was they're saying like, well, Allah is the God, Muhammad is the prophet, and Quran is the word of God. But I personally know people who call themselves Muslims who don't agree with these three things. So that's a fact of life that I've seen, because it's not inclusive. It's not inclusive to people that I value, and I value their opinion. And I feel that these people are going to be in the future the majority.
I don't think people should be I don't think that you're, if somebody's calling themselves a Muslim and you're disagreeing with their definition, of a Muslim, you're being exclusive. You're not kicking them out of any group. You're not denying them to speak. You're not telling them that they don't have a right to use that definition. All you're saying is that you disagree with their definition.
I think both of you guys are kind of. I feel like you're both more aligned on this than you think. I think
same thing. Like
I think both of you guys are saying that. Muslim has a definition. You don't consider yourself Muslims because you don't believe, and that's what your own thing is.
We disagree. I mean, the disagreement is that he wouldn't tell them that he disagrees with the definition. I would tell them that I disagree with their definition, but I don't think that's being exclusive.
I think it's more that he wouldn't tell them that they're not Muslim. He wouldn't tell them they're not Muslim.
Well, I would. Okay, the thing is that I would word that better because that sounds rude. I would just word it. I word it differently. I would say I disagree with their definition of a Muslim, right? Because just saying you're not a Muslim, that just comes off as rude, and I don't want to be rude, right? But I think people can take it if you just say, "Well, I disagree with that definition." I think that's a very nice way of saying it, and I don't think that you're being exclusive by saying you disagree with the definition. If somebody comes and tells me I believe in a conscious creator of the universe, but I identify as an atheist, I'm not going to tell them they can't do that. I'm just going to tell them, I just disagree with your definition. That's what I'm saying. That's not exclusive. I didn't tell them they can't say it. I didn't tell them they're not welcome to talk to us. You're being inclusive. You're just disagreeing on definition. I think that's okay. Anyways, go back. Let's go back.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask you another thing about, so you were talking about, we were talking about metaphorical verses. There's another thing that you talked about the length of pregnancy, where the Quran in 2 different verses talks about the length of pregnancy and it gets it wrong.
These are 2 verses. One says, حَمْلُهُ وَفِصَالُهُ 30 شهرا. Pregnancy and breastfeeding is 30 months. And the other verse says, الوالدات يرضعن أولادهن حولين كاملين. The mothers breastfeed their children for 2 full years. You guys still hear me?
Yeah.
So, basically, if breastfeeding is 2 years, pregnancy and breastfeeding is 30 months, that would make pregnancy 6 months, which is not true.
That is not true.
Yeah, and one of the this is the answer, because I've talked to a lot of people and say, well, some people will say, well, technically you can have a pregnant 6 months and the baby would still be alive. At the end of the pregnancy, and they will try to say that, well, it's they God is very wise. Very wise. This is why he used the most littlest amount. But I mean, I guess if you want to think that, you can think that. I think that's ridiculous, but that's my thinking.
So,
and I feel like if there was a creator of the universe, who would write a book, they would know how long pregnancy is.
I think that there was a verse. There's another set of 3 verses in the Quran in Surah 86, verses 5-7, where it says, that God created you from a fluid that was ejected from between the backbone and the ribs.
Yes.
Right. So whether you're talking about sperm or semen.
خلق من ماء دافق يخرج من بين الصلب والترائب.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So what that means is essentially that they're saying that sperm and semen comes from the chest. So I had a discussion with one of the sort of the wishy-washy types, and he went to great lengths to talk about different positions that it's actually between the chest and the ribs of the woman. I'm like, well, if you were doing that, you'd have to be in doggy style position, and and then he started talking about the fetus. He's like, well, when the fetus is in a certain stage of development, the genitals of the male fetus are between the ribs and the backbone of the woman. I'm like, the fetus does not produce semen or sperm. And he just went over it. It was insane. And he wrote a whole blog post on it called Does the Quran say sperm is created in the chest? His name is Kashif Chaudhry. It's really funny. He's I'll actually, if the blog post is still up, I'll link it in the description. I'll make a note of that right now. And it was just
it's amazing to me how much effort people go through to explain these things to themselves. But in a way, I feel, here's the thing. Mm-hmm. As I've grown older, I've starting to like almost admire these efforts. I mean, they're just really trying hard. I mean, can we give these people some credit that they're trying really, really hard to keep...
Ibrahim, your connection is very bad.
Yeah. Oh, Ibrahim, do you want to do one thing? Do you want to log out and come back in again?
No. You know what you should do? You should connect your internet by like Elan to directly instead of using Wi-Fi.
Plug in. Let me try to do that.
Yeah. Okay. So, is he?
Give me 10
you're
minutes.
in New York?
Or less than 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
Yeah. Sure. Take your time.
I'm gonna tell you something, Ali, while we wait. But isn't he in New York?
Yeah.
Okay. We have connection. We have people from Middle East with better connections.
I know. It's like this happened. Remember that I was going through a phase, like I'm in Toronto, and we were going through a time when I was having really, really tough like connection issues.
Yeah.
I think it happens sometimes.
Here's what Muslims will tell you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. They used to say this. That the reason why God didn't send obvious miracles, right? You know, if the Quran had one line said, for example, light is the fastest thing in the universe, right? It wouldn't make sense then. And now we would be like, oh my God, look what the Quran said, right? It would be such an easy line to add, right?
Yeah.
The thing people say as a response is that makes it too easy, right? For you to believe in God. And I think Muhammad, the stories around Muhammad was also a lot of people demanded better miracles from him. And his excuse was, look at this town next to us that was destroyed. You know what happened to them? Their prophet gave them miracles and they didn't believe. And if you see miracles, right, and you don't believe, then you're really fucked, right? So basically Muhammad tried to make this as if this is for their own sake. Like he wasn't giving them crazy miracles like opening the sea or fire coming from the sky, because if you see those things and still reject God, then God will really punish you. So he's just giving you a mild miracle, which apparently is also the greatest miracle. So just for your own sake. But I don't know, but this kind of stories in the around the Quran sometimes make me think, like, you know how people say, like, well, none of these stories is proven to be true. Like, there is not much in history about Muhammad and his life that is proven, right? Mm-hmm. And that's true. But these stories makes me sometimes think like it is likely that there's some truth to these stories, because if it was completely based on nothing, they would just add crazy miracles in there. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like Muhammad, they did with Shaq al-Qamar when the moon got cut in half. Like there would be way more of that. It wouldn't be like people doubting Muhammad, or like, how could you think that dead people will ever be alive? How could you, like Muhammad just being, I'm not going to give you miracles because this and that. It would be like everybody believed in him right away, and he just made camels coming out of the ground and things turned into gold and shit like that, right? I don't know. It would be way more of that stuff instead of him keep on making excuses for why he's not giving them miracles. That's why I think maybe, I don't know if this is a right way of thinking about it or not, but maybe there's more truth to the story than not all of the details, right?
I think that actually makes it makes it more sort of endearing and compelling. I think that, you know, the point that Ibrahim was making, that
really, but were they really that smart in the art of storytelling to say, like, at that time, to think like we could add miracles, but this would be more enduring and relatable? Like, is that how they really thought about it?
I don't know if they thought that way, but I think
better?
Ibrahim, yeah, this is great. I love this. But I think that was what Ibrahim was saying before about it being sort of a little more intelligent. I think the fact that it's unseen, it's a little more philosophical. You don't have the traditional miracles that are like magic tricks, like, you know, turning sticks into snakes and stuff. But you do have them, but not by Muhammad. They do mention it in the Quran, from like all the stuff from Moses. They do. For the previous ones, you do have them, but like there's nothing that when it came to Muhammad himself and the stuff that he did, like he relied on poetry. Like, the whole thing was like, can anybody write a book like the Quran?
And a lot of it was
no. A lot of it was actually mind tricks. Like the Jedi mind trick is like, have you ever seen a book that's better than this? And then you're thinking, before that, you would have thought, I probably have. Yeah, sure. But then once he says, have you ever seen a book that's better than this? And it's like, great. And everybody's riled up and everybody's adrenaline's going, have you seen a book better than this? And it's like, no, I haven't. It's really, no, that's how it is. I mean, it's a very, very, the passion is they've made it very compelling, but it's demagoguery. It's actually a very modern way.
Let's ask Ibrahim. Ibrahim, why do you think that, like, when the stories are in the Quran, when they ask Muhammad to give us miracles, instead of just like whoever is writing the Quran, just writing like, and then Muhammad made houses turn into gold and camels coming out of the ground and cats raining and shit like that. And instead of adding that, he kept on saying that, oh, if I show you miracles and you don't believe, then you're fucked, right? That's why I'm not going to give you miracles.
Well, that's the superiority. That's why Islam is better than other religions, I think. Because, well, at least...
That's what I was saying.
At least Muhammad is a real person. Jesus, I don't think Jesus is a real person, or Moses, or Abraham, or any of these characters. I think they're fictional characters. Muhammad is a real person, a real historic figure. Actually,
that's what I was arguing.
That's
what I was arguing, but some people challenge that. Some people say there is no historical proof for the existence of Muhammad.
Well, I don't talk to these people because the historical proof for the existence of Muhammad is the Islamic countries that are in the world today.
No, okay? Because he didn't. That was Omar.
There's a lot of non-Muslim historians who lived around that time who talked about Muhammad.
No, they talked about Muhammad, but none of them met Muhammad. Okay. Now, I'm not. By the way, I agree with you guys because I just reading the stories. They seemed so inconvenient. For me, it seems like they were real because if they weren't real, they would be more fascinating, right? Mm-hmm. But I'm saying a lot of historians, like all the countries that were invaded, who did that? Omar did that, and then maybe Muawiyah did that, right?
Yeah.
Muhammad didn't do that, and all the historians that talk about Muhammad, they never met Muhammad. They heard about Muhammad from all the Muslims that started conquering the other countries. So a lot of people say they're not saying Muhammad didn't exist, but there is no direct proof of Muhammad.
You know what? I think that just going back to the whole miracles thing, I think it's a more one of the reasons that, and you've actually got me thinking on this, that when it comes to miracles and doing magic tricks, which also appear in the Quran for the other prophets, that's a more primitive way of being compelling. I think the more modern way of being compelling, a more sort of contemporary, recent way is like Hitler never had any miracles, but he had crowds that were massive, like huge. Like he had probably some of the biggest crowds I've ever seen on video for anyone in history. So that classic sort of the populist demagoguery, I think that Muhammad may have been one of the first people to debut that. Like we didn't really use miracles. He didn't use that. He used rhetoric.
If he's real, he's one of the smartest entrepreneurs ever. He went from being a shepherd to being the husband of one of the richest traders, and then all of becoming a king of all Arabia. So that's a very success story. Like if you compare him to Jesus, if both of them were real, Jesus tried to do the same thing. He just failed. He tried to start a rebellion, but he got crucified instead. And Muhammad basically tried to do the same thing, but he was more successful at what he did. I think if Jesus wasn't crucified, it would be like Muhammad. He would have his. He would start ruling, and once he starts ruling, maybe his attitude would have changed.
Jesus did come up with the whole proselytizing. Well, I mean, the people after him did. I think they're the ones who did most of the work with him. But Ibrahim, go ahead. What you're saying?
Wait. You think Muhammad is real? Why? Ibrahim?
I was saying, I think Muhammad is, Jesus is not a real character. Jesus is basically a spin-off that's been repeated over and over. The same idea, the same story has existed in older civilizations before. Jesus is a myth. For all practical purposes, Jesus that we know of, the guy that can walk on water and that cute stuff, that is not a real person. Muhammad is a real person with a real effect in the world. Muhammad is a military leader is a political leader, is a tribal leader, with effect that ripples through history until today, that is consistent, I think that Muhammad is the most influential person who ever walked on planet Earth. The world that we live in today is shaped by this man who lived in the middle of the desert, what is it, like 1,600 years ago?
1,300 years ago, 1,300 Gregorian.
Yeah. So it's our world is shaped by this guy. So like him or not, to remove that effect, we live in his world. And
well, you could also say that with Hitler. But
Hitler lost, though. Hitler lost his war.
Right.
There's no comparison at all between Muhammad and Hitler. Hitler, how long did Hitler's effect last?
Okay, but the more
60 years? Are you comparing Muhammad to Hitler? That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. Muhammad's effect on the world has lasted over 1,000 years.
Okay, well, I'll compare it to someone else. Caesar. I think Caesar had a greater effect on the whole world than Muhammad. Because
I don't know.
Well, Caesar had a big effect in shaping how the world looks like today. Yes. I wouldn't say more than Muhammad.
No, the farther back in history, the effect is going to be more because of the butterfly effect.
I agree with you, and I understand that. But what I'm telling you is, there's none of these people have followers today. None of these people have people today, over 1.5 billion humans on planet Earth, that think that they are, everything they did is to be repeated, to be emulated, to try to, shit, people still enter the bathroom with their right foot because he used to like to do that.
It should be the left one. But yes, we were talking
the littlest details in people's lives. They go, well, Muhammad used to like this. We have to do it like Muhammad. There's nobody in the world that people do that with. And to think that this has happened for, as long a time with that many people I don't think there's anybody. I mean, I could be wrong. It's my opinion.
Yeah, because people, Jesus might have been real, and then the added stuff from other gods was just added to him, right? So it's possible that there was this Jesus guy that was just a dude that when it started rebellion.
Well, there were a lot of people who were crucified by the Romans because they thought they were prophets.
Jesus might have been.
That wasn't just.
Yeah, but Jesus might have been one of them.
But
Jesus might have been
for
one
all
of them.
practical purposes.
Point, I think the compelling thing here is that the Jesus story, his biographical story, which is really all we have, has been that has happened thousands of years before the Horus.
I agree that
Egyptian gods, really, a lot of them have had.
My point is that all these added stories about Jesus obviously were taken from other stories and added to that character, right? But there might have been, I don't know, but there might have been a historical Jesus a real guy that all these other stories were added to him, right? Mm-hmm. And this might also be true about Muhammad, because even if Muhammad existed, all of this hadith, all of this, what he did in this battle or that battle, what he said to these people, all of that stuff, they might have been added to his story. Even Fatima was telling, even the Quran was changed by Fatima. There was an ayah in the fucking Quran that Fatima told Osman to change it because she remembered it differently. No, not Fatima, sorry, Aisha. I'm Shia, so I always think Fatima first. But Aisha constantly came up with hadith after Muhammad's death based on the political needs. So all of the stories about Muhammad could be 90% of it could be made up. We don't know, right? They might have been real, they might have been made up. So Muhammad could be just like Jesus. It could be the core guy that was real, and all the stories around him was just added. So
I'm sure there was a lot that was tagged onto. I think that happens with general, even real or fake historical figures.
I am one of the people. The Quran wasn't changed, and if it was, I don't care, because we have one Quran now that everybody agrees on. So for all practical purposes, I'm going to consider it to be what it is. And the Quran is really the most, most of the life of Muhammad is touched upon in the Quran. So even if you ignore hadith, you still get a very good idea, a very solid picture of what this guy's life was like.
He's admonishing his wives.
The Quran wasn't changed after Osman.
Reprimanding his wives, in terms of Ghazwa, in terms of his wars, his battles. All these battles are documented in the Quran. I can, when you read a book and you notice the change of the author's character.
You're right.
The Quran, noticeable change of character between the Meccan Quran and the Medina Quran. I almost know Muhammad from his book. He was someone, like, he had the leanings, like he spoke and he talked like a freedom fighter when he was in Mecca. The book was very like the Meccan Quran is good. It's a very it talks about equality, talks about being nice to orphans. It talks about fighting for freedom. It talks about rejecting.
It talks about hell. It talks about hell a lot.
Religions.
No, yeah, it does. But I think that
these are the parts that I like in it. There are some things that I actually enjoy in the Quran. The things that
I enjoy all of Quran if you don't believe in it. But go on, sorry.
Well, I enjoy it's almost think of it as the Iliad, or think of it as a work of poetry or a work of philosophy, and then you'll be able to see for example, there are a lot of secular values and questioning values in the Quran if you really know where to look. All the Meccan Quran is talking about how when the prophets went to their people, they were rejected, and they were telling, well, why are you following the religion of your parents and grandparents? Why don't you follow the truth, the concept of truth, and trying to follow the truth? That's a very secular concept. That's so. There are some parts of it that I like and I enjoy, and it resonates with me. And like you're talking about, the story of Abraham, which for me when I was a child, I read and I felt connected to because of my name. And he's talking to his father, and he's telling his father, "Dad, why are you worship this statue that you made with your own hands? Why don't you think? Why don't you contemplate that you've created this with your hands and now you're worshiping it?" So, and then you see what happens in the Medina Quran when Muhammad is king. He's effectively a ruler. He's effectively a president or a king, and it becomes more of a legislative book. And it talks about rules and regulations, what you do in battle, what you do with women, and it's talking about dividing booty, and you can see the change of character in this guy. You can sense it in his book that he used to. Go ahead.
Oh no! I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead. Finish what you're saying.
Muhammad is not only real. We have a very good sense of what he thought at different parts of his life from his work that is in every house. And
yeah, I think that there's
Yes, you keep getting cut, and we don't know when to jump in because we don't know if you stop talking, you're just got cut.
We'll figure it out. But I think that I kind of get that because it actually parallels the biographies of a lot of other historical figures. Like this whole idea of people who start off as rebels, like for instance Gandhi, or the first communist revolutionaries, right? Who started out as, we're going to rebel against the state, and we're going to go up and we're going to do it like Gandhi did it non-violently. So a lot of his earlier stuff was beautiful. It was like non-violent and protest. We're going to rise up against the man. We're going to stick it to the man. Started off.
Come on, the Quran, the Meccan Quran is not a philosophical.
No. Wait, Armin. Yeah. What I'm saying is, I'm not comparing that to Gandhi. Gandhi was obviously in the 20th century. Muhammad was
not the 20th century. The Greek, thousands of years before the Quran, the Greek talked about philosophy, they talked about ethics, they talked about democracy, they talked about let me okay, go ahead.
No, I'm actually talking about something different, Armin. I know what you're saying. I'm not making that parallel. Yeah, the parallel I'm making is the human trajectory of people who start out as idealists in the context of their time, and then later on, they become the oppressor themselves. So when Gandhi started out with his whole nonviolent protest thing, not like Muhammad, but his own thing, he started out as with nonviolent protests and all of these other beautiful concepts about, rebelling against the authority.
They're not very beautiful, they're basic.
And then later on, when he became a statesman, he became a typical statesman. He became the same kind of politician that he was fighting against. So in Muhammad's case, which was different, initially he was like the reject, and he was starting up a new religion, and he was blaspheming against the Quraysh, and he was, standing up to whatever he thought was injustice. And then later on, he became the same statesman and warlord and warmonger that he was fighting against when he started out. So what I'm saying is that trajectory, that biography, is actually a very it's a very human story.
Right. That human part of it, the fact that it seems likely, like, makes it more likely for the Quran to be based on some true story, because it looks like somebody was when they weren't in power, they were sweet and nice, and then when they became in power, all of a sudden they became the verses started to become more about how to rule rather than, hey, we're so nice, join this little cult that we're starting. But it seems like it could be based on a real guy. But the fact that the Quran hasn't changed after Osman, right? So between Muhammad's death and Osman, people just memorize. It was just orally. People just remember, oh, I remember this verse, I remember that verse. We have no idea how much of that shit was real. But it
was hearsay. It was literally hearsay.
It was hearsay. So a lot of things changed between. People admit that about the hadith, but people say, but the Quran hasn't changed. The Quran didn't change after Osman decided to canonize it. He burned shitload of other books that didn't agree with his version of the Quran. And after that, it didn't change. We don't know what happened between Muhammad's death and Osman, right? So, but I do agree that because of the character development, it might suggest that this is based on some true story. But with regards to the Meccan verses, I don't give them that much credit. I enjoy the Quran as a historical document that shows us about the thinking, what people in this area were thinking at that time. It's a very interesting historical document. That's how I enjoy the Quran. But I don't enjoy it at all as a philosophical document or as an ethical document. It has nothing over so much better work of philosophers thousands of years before the Quran was written.
So one question for you, Armin. Armin, is there, because I think that one of the reasons, because we talked about Nazism and versus like Abrahamic religions, and one of the reasons that Abrahamic religions have outlasted Nazism for so long is because they have good things in them too that people relate to.
Yeah, it's sugar-coated bullshit.
Yeah. So one of the questions for you is there anything when you read the Quran right now, is there anything in it that you find that's positive? I mean, even we agree that most of it is.
Okay. Okay. It is, for example, take care of orphans. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, obviously that's a good thing.
But then it says to marry them. It's like, if you can't take care of them, marry them.
All right, but that's it. Okay. But,
I know, but I'm sorry, it was my question.
But the thing is, that's not an ethical breakthrough. If you look at the way ancient Greeks talked about ethics, then you have to scratch your head and you have to read it again and you ponder on it. Like, now we're going to fucking congratulate the book after it tells go rape women and beat your wife and this and that, because it tells you oh, by the way, take care of orphans. We think that's worth of congratulating.
Oh yeah, we agree on that.
I know. But when you ask me if there's anything good in there, I mean, it's really hard to write a book that is 100% shitty. It has to, I really don't know. That would be a miracle of itself.
I did this one thing once. I may have mentioned it here before. Is that I took 5 quotes from Hitler's Mein Kampf. That sounded really good. Just stuff about courage and bravery, just really general shit. and I put it up on my, I think it was Facebook, and I attributed them to Hazrat Ali, right? The fourth Caliph, first Imam, and all these people started liking it. All my like Shia friends and stuff. They're like, "Oh, it's a beautiful quote from Hazrat." And then later, I was like, "Oh, guys, I'm sorry, I got it mixed up. It was actually from Hitler." And this was the whole idea that even in Mein Kampf, you can find stuff
that is good.
That is good. Like, one thing I always liked about the Quran, the thing that actually sold me on it when I was in the times that I did sort of dabble in belief, and I was never properly religious. Like I think like you guys. I was always very doubtful since I was a kid, but there were times when I kind of got into it and I tried to find out. I was like, what is this thing that everybody around me loves? And the thing that really sold me on it was the concept of zakah, which is charity. Just a bit of your salary every year goes to charity. And I like that a lot. And to me, that just became the crux of it. And I think that's what we do when we try to accept these things. We take one or two good things.
Well, it's supposed to go to Muhammad's family, the whole shit.
That's a khums thing, but but that's a Shia thing. But the zakah itself is just basically general charity. And so I held on to that. And then I looked around and I realized that that's kind of what people do. People ignore everything, and then they take one or two things that they really like and they hold on to it, and that becomes Islam for them. Mm. Right? For my dad, for instance, he used to talk about Sharia all the time. He's like, Sharia, this, Sharia. And I'm like, Dad, what do you mean by Sharia? He's like, well, if true Sharia was applied, then the Islamic and in a true Islamic state, then it would be just like the United States. Because Sharia is about free speech and free...
Wow, that shows...
that's what you mean. And that's why I'm always skeptical of these polls when they ask all these Pew poll people, right? And they go, and they're like, how many Muslims believe in Sharia? If they ask someone like my dad or most of my uncles in Pakistan, they'd be like, of course I believe in Sharia. It's the same thing as, the freedom of speech and secularism. That's what real Islam is. And they just kind of make it. And it's what David Silverman was saying. Is like people just kind of take this God and they make it a projection of themselves. And they think that that's what it is. And I did that with the zakah thing because I was really happy at that time. I got my socialistic tendencies. Well, and nowadays, if you help an old lady across the street, they call you a socialist, right? So, but I think that really is how this stuff works.
But that's the damaging part of it. That's why, because this whole thing comes with a package of lots of harmful bullshit. And this whole zakat and take care of orphan, what makes it last, right? So this basic sugarcoating, it's the reason why all of the damaging parts have survived for so long. Mm-hmm. So I don't see these good parts as a good thing. These good parts of it is the curse that it's the sugarcoating around the poison pill that has lasted for 1400 years.
No, disagree.
Okay,
disagree. Because what you're describing is something that's designed to be that way, and I don't think it was.
It's not by design. It's by selection. It's by meme selection. It survived because of it, not because there was no genius sitting like, I'm going to add this because it's going to make it survive. No, there wasn't some genius people that decided that they're going to add this. Islam is a meme, and it survived in competition to other memes because of unnatural selection.
Hey, Ibrahim, finish what you were saying. I wanted to hear
but it also, let's not forget that it's all, other than being a meme, it's also an effective system of governance.
Yes, I agree.
That has stood the test of time.
I agree. Unfortunately, yes.
And that system has been implemented in the Quran as well. So there's the spiritual part, agree with it or not. And then there's also the legislative part that has been effective for more than any other, ruling system in recorded history.
Right, but that doesn't make it a good thing just because it's effective at government.
It makes it an effective thing. It makes it a real thing that we have to deal with.
Yes, I agree.
And we have to give it. If you want to beat it, you have to know how to deal with it, and you have to give it credit for the good things that it does.
No, okay, you just lost me. I was agreeing with you until you said good thing. Just because strength does not mean good. I give it credit for its strength. I give it credit for its...
Strength does not mean good. I think strength means good.
No, if an evil thing could be very strong, then an evil thing, the stronger it is, that makes it worse. No, you have to...
But strength itself is a good thing. Maybe we want to get some of the,
Oh, we have a very strong virus.
No, but Armin, going back to what you were saying about a lot of the imams, right? Like that. Like, I think what they're saying is that to have strength, like, you said that there are certain things you admire about them, even though you disagree with everything they say, right? And that thing that you kind of, I think that you'd admire about these people, I guess you could call it strength, you could call it consistency, you could call it something that is...
No, I admire their passion, but in Islam, for example, cancer cells could be very strong. And I could give credit to I can understand that they're very strong when we're trying to battle.
As an oncologic pathologist, I got to say, I totally admire cancer cells. I'm not worthy. This is the shit. Like, this stuff these things can do is like they're fucking.
No, I mean, once you understand how cancer cells work, you become very interested, and you might be like, wow, this is amazing. You might become very passionate about understanding how cancer cells work, but that doesn't mean that the strength of the cancer cells is bad for us, right?
So here's where I'm at with this. I think that this whole thing kind of, we haven't said the R word here. The R word is Armin's least favorite word, Ibrahim. It's called, it's reform. Okay. So, and here so
what's the R word? I was getting nervous for a second.
The R word is reform. So, and we're kind of running out of time. We're almost at 2 hours. So this is a lot of fun.
You're going to go to bed and have work tomorrow.
Yeah, I know. We're gonna. So let's wrap up in the next 5-10 minutes. But
you can't start a topic on reform and just say we're gonna wrap it up in 5 minutes.
Armin, okay, listen. We did the whole thing with the Muslim definition. We've talked about reform so many times on this.
You want to talk about reform, and I can.
But I will just summarize, Ibrahim. I will summarize what my position on it is. And what Armin's is really, really quick. And Armin, correct me if I'm wrong, but let's not dwell on it too much.
Okay.
I want to let Ibrahim have the last word.
Yeah, and also we need to talk about some events coming up.
Yes, we'll do that at the end. So the thing with reform is that so one thing that Armin and I completely agree on is that the reform approach of reinterpreting the Quran, right? And taking this verse, okay, this word actually means this, idrubuhunna actually means, to kiss your wife and, all this stuff. That stuff I don't think is convincing to the people who need to know it the most. I mean, the people we talked to, we had the Tanya Joya, who was the ex-wife of the ISIS general John Georgelas, was a white Christian guy who later became a Zahiri, became a very, very big linguist. He knows everything inside out. If you tell him that idrubuhunna actually means to hit the road or something, he would laugh in your face. Okay, so would Baghdadi, right? So I don't think that part of reform I am utterly unconvinced by, and so is Armin. Now, part of reform that I do think makes sense and that I fully support is creating a place like Muslimish, like creating a place for everybody to come in, and this includes everybody from conservative Muslims to liberal Muslims to ex-Muslims and apostates and firebrand people like Armin saying whatever he wants to say and you saying what you want to say, and everybody being able to have that conversation. So that's Muslim reform. So I would, the way I'd phrase it is that I don't subscribe to Islamic reform. I subscribe to Muslim reform.
Wait, Andy, we don't disagree. We don't disagree. I always say you can reform Muslims. You can't reform Islam.
Yeah. So
we don't disagree on that. I don't hate the R word. I hate it when you use it on Islam. I say you can use it on Muslim. You can reform Muslims. You can't reform Islam.
Okay, and by Islam we specifically mean that as it's in its canonical texts, right? So
you can't reform reform white wife beating. You can't reform Nazism. You have to get rid of Nazism. You can't reform Islam.
So the other thing, but we can reform the way that Muslims think. Now, in my opinion, that includes people changing the definition of what the word Muslim means over time, even in 100 years if it happens. And it starts with rejecting infallibility. And I think that people, once they are open to the idea of rejecting infallibility, even if they don't immediately adopt that.
It's just an excuse for not examining the Quran.
Yeah, but
that's an excuse for not thinking critically about. Go on. Yeah.
Whatever it is, I think that if they are at least open to the idea that even if they demote it from its the infallible word of God too was divinely inspired. And some of these things were maybe put in between Muhammad and Usman, and maybe that's not real, but most of it is at least inspired, and we can use it as a guide rather than an infallible kind of text. Even if it gets demoted to that point, I actually think that that's a good thing. I think that's a better argument than actually reinterpreting the different words in the actual parts of the scripture. So that's kind of our sort of overall position. How I think about it, how Armin thinks about it. I think I got most of what he was saying, and he cleared it out there too. How do you feel about reform? The whole idea of
I don't think you can reform Islam.
Oh,
honestly.
yay! That's great.
But I would like to let people who want to try to reform Islam, try to reform Islam. So I personally don't think you can reform Islam.
Yeah.
But I would like people to, if they want to try to reform it, I want to help them.
Okay, I agree with you on that, but I don't understand when people say we have to let people reform Islam. How can we stop? Nobody is making the argument to go to reformists and put a gun on their head and telling them to stop trying to reform Islam, right? Nobody. I mean, show me one person that doesn't agree with reforming Islam that is saying that we have to force these reformers to stop reforming Islam. That's why I don't understand that when people say we have to let people try to reform Islam. Who is forcing them not to?
Who is not letting them? But the point is, will you help them? I think what Ibrahim's saying is that he would actually, he's not going to stop them, but he would actually go beyond it and actually help them try to achieve that goal.
Yes.
Okay. Well, when you say help them, a lot of these reformist Muslims, they have other goals that I will help them with, right? Like a lot of these reformist Muslims are fighting for free speech. I will help them with that. A lot of the reformist Muslims are fighting for equal rights for women, for gay rights, for all, like lots of this. I will help them with those things. But if they're telling people this word that is saying beat your wife actually means tickle your wife, I will tell them, I'm not going to lie to people, okay? You could go ahead and lie to people. I'm not going to lie to people. So no, I would not help them with that.
Can I let me speak on this? Because this is actually something that I've changed my position on.
Okay. Ibrahim, you get the last word. After this, we're going to go to the events. Armin, we're going to have to restrain ourselves.
Okay.
But be good host.
It's still one of my biggest pet peeves that, when someone tells me idrabuhunna, doesn't mean idrabuhunna. Like, it says to beat. I know it says to beat. Anybody who speaks Arabic knows it says to beat. But, if you look at it this way, it doesn't mean to beat. So I don't need to look at it like with my head tilted. And but here's the thing, and it used to bother me. But here's the thing. Is it helpful or not? Does it make the world a better place? Even, let's say, does it make it a better place for one person? If someone thinks that, and tells someone else, well, it doesn't really mean to beat, as long as I have the opportunity to say my opinion, as long as I have the ability to say, well, actually, I think it doesn't say to beat. The word is clear. It says idrabuhunna. Anybody who speaks Arabic can read that. You can. I just want my space to be able to say this. And if someone else wants his space to say, well, I would prefer to look at it this way, that's another positive point of view that can have a positive effect on someone's opinion or life. And that's really all I have to say about that.
Okay. So we know, I just want to say for the record, I know that Armin disagrees with this. I know Armin.
The negative is more than the positive. The negative is not critically looking at the Quran and rejecting the whole thing. So even if there's a positive, the negative is more. That's all I say. Go.
Okay, Armin, you got it in. There you go. But so, Ibrahim, we're going to end this. I want to talk about Muslimish. When is it? So I love your events. I love going there and speaking to them. I want more and more people to come out to them. I know that they've been fairly sizable, but I think that they could be a lot more sizable because I think the kind of stuff that you guys talk about, there's a huge audience for it. There's a lot of other people that would really benefit from it. The last event you had in December that both Alishba and I were at was at the Center for Humanistic Judaism, actually, in It's a beautiful building.
So, actually, it doesn't have Judaism in the name anymore. It's called Secular Humanist something.
That's great. See, you don't need...
David Silverman's going to be very happy about that.
See, you don't need...
They don't have the name, the word Judaism in the new title.
That's progress. You don't need secular Islam. You need just secular. That's all you need, for example.
Yeah. So go ahead.
So yeah, I was gonna wanted to say that we're gonna have two events coming up. One is gonna be in Boston at the Humanist Hub at Harvard University. On April 29th, that's the Sunday. Ali, you're going to be there?
I am going to be there. So I was actually going to see if that conflicted with my Netherlands trip, but no, I'll be back from the Netherlands at least 10 or 15 days before that. So yes, I will be there.
So that's going to be a smaller event. We're only going to have it's going to be, between 1 and 4 for us. It's going to be part of the Humanist Hub program, but we're going to get, the time period between 1 and 4. But the other big event that we're having is the Muslimish conference. We've had a conference every year now since 2012. No, since 2013, with the exception of 1 year. Last year, we've had 2 conferences, one in New York and one in Detroit.
Yeah.
2018, we're going to have our big conference is going to be again at Hunter College, the same location we had it last year. Mm-hmm. And we're building a really good relationship with Hunter. It's really I'm very happy with it, and it's very encouraging. And I have to put a shout out also for a group that has helped us a lot. Is Footsteps, which is a group for people who left ultra-Orthodox Judaism. We find that people who have been in ultra-Orthodox Judaism have very similar problems to people who come from Muslim background, and they have been through because we're a volunteer group and we really don't have a lot of experience. All of us are just doing this because we want to do it. So it's good to see what others have done and learn from it. And so yeah, it's going to be June 23rd. It's going to be a Saturday all-day event at Hunter, and we will be up. And Ali, you're going to be joining us. And I also I'm happy to say that Maryam Namazie is going to be attending as well. She's going to be our keynote speaker. The conference in June. So the event in Boston on April 29th is going to be about building communities. It's going to be an attempt to try to start a Muslimish group in Boston. And the Muslimish conference on June 23rd in New York City, that's going to be under cultivating arts. I think it's encouraging sciences and building communities. Mm-hmm. It's about arts and science. So this is the first conference we're going to have that's going to be focused on encouraging the arts and sciences, which I think is a missing piece that has not been, done, which so we like to do what's not being done. Mm. And that was I have to give a shout out to everybody in the executive board in Muslimish, Jinan Raouf, who came up with this idea, and she really has been phenomenal.
She's great. She's great.
And also, so she came up with the idea of, and I think almost every year she helps us solidify for what is the theme of the conference going to be about. And this year we decided it's going to be about cultivating arts, encouraging the science, and building communities. So Maryam Namazie is going to be our keynote speaker. She's going to speak in our because she's the one. She helped so many communities around the world for people who have left Islam and secular communities. And I think it's going to be amazing. And Ali, of course, you're going to be there, right? And Arban, I hope you can join us as well. It's to me, it's a once a year event, and we get to meet each other. We get to have a party. We get to we get to celebrate with each other. It means a lot to me.
I would say, first of all, it's a blast, and not that kind of blast, guys. So don't freak out. And the other thing I wanted to say, I actually did meet the people from Footsteps at the Detroit conference, and then we just a couple of episodes ago we had Ari Hershkowitz, who was featured in the Netflix documentary One of Us, and he was actually on this podcast a few episodes ago. And if you guys want to check that out, please do check that out, and you'll see Ibrahim's point. So Footsteps actually helped him get out of his Hasidic Jewish community, and he speaks about it at length. And there really are a lot of parallels with what ex-Muslims go through as well.
Ari is now actually the head of for events of Atheist Republic consulates in New York, and he's setting up events there. So that's pretty good too. So he's making investment.
That made me very happy. That's excellent.
But can you give us the link for people to find about the event? Is muslimish.org.
Muslimish.org.
And then there's a click on the conferences tab. Right now it says more details to be announced, but
we don't have it yet.
Yeah, but
we have those from our past conferences. If anybody wants to see that, get an idea about. But we have a very wide range of topics.
Right. But the main thing is that it's June 23rd, 2018 in New York, and there's you can see some YouTube videos of their past events as well there as well. When the audio version of this podcast comes out on YouTube and podcast apps and iTunes and everywhere, we will have a link to the 2008 conference link. Actually, I'll make the link to the main homepage of Muslimish, so that even if you listen to it, just go to the website and click on the conferences tab. I just want to make sure that I put a link that will always be relevant, so that if somebody's listening to this after the event, the link is still a relevant link. Just once you go to the homepage, just click on conferences and the information is going to be there.
Yeah.
Yes, and hopefully it will always be relevant, because we will always have a conference. We're not going anywhere.
Yeah, I was, and anything we can do, Ibrahim, because I told you, and I've said this before here, and I told Noura this as well, the Muslimish conference is actually, I've spoken a lot in a lot of places. It's actually my favorite conference to go to, just because of the crowd, the people there. I mean, again, this the last thing, there were people like Janan, there were people like Footsteps, all of these sort of people come together. I think you had the Lebanese ambassador to...
Wow.
Yeah, you had, and all of them, and he was sitting there, he was listening to all of us talking, he was listening to our ideas, and I think that the crowd that you get, the speakers that you get, are actually really, really fantastic. The fact that so many sort of seemingly disparate groups come together and they exchange ideas, it really is what it means. So, I mean,
I think you guys managed to fill like a niche area that is very important, because like a lot of the for example, the Lebanese ambassador probably wouldn't go to an ex-Muslim event, right? If it was, because that would probably look bad back at home, right? But Muslimish,
it's an inclusive name. It's a great name too, I think.
Yeah.
Yes, and I want to say that, can I mention something else? This name, please. Muslimish, the person who came up with that name, her name is Sid Leroy. She used to work in CFI, and she's awesome. And I miss her so much. I don't know, she doesn't do like work for nonprofit organizations anymore, but she was amazing.
Nice. Well, shout out to her. But I think you guys are filling a very important area that nobody else is. So good job on that. And I hope you keep growing and let us know how we can help. And people, make sure you check it out.
Yeah, Ibrahim, man, thank you for coming on. I loved it. I really enjoyed this, actually. I know that it was crazy. We probably spent a lot of time trying to define Muslim, but hopefully everybody's going to listen to this and have their own definition.
Yeah, comment. Please
kidding.
Comment.
I'm just bugging Armin.
No. I think this is serious. You guys, if we had, that wasn't just one disagreement. We had lots of disagreements, and that makes it more fun. And if you guys agree with Ibrahim or disagree or with me, just comment. I will make sure to read your comments. Would be very interesting to see what people think.
Yeah. So anyway, Ibrahim, thanks a lot. Yeah, you know I love you, man. I've known you for years and years and years. I love all the work you do. I'm super, super inspired. And I'd love to have you back on here anytime and just talking. Looking forward to hanging out.
Let me know when.
Yeah, man. Okay.
Yes.
Take care.
It's going to be fun.
Right.
It will be.
The Secular Jihadists have been made possible thanks to the Illuminati and the covert support of Israel and the CIA. That's what we have been told, but we haven't received our checks yet. If you like what we do, please support us. Share the podcast with your friends. Write and tweet us with topic and guest suggestions. Or head over to secularjihadist.com and give $1 or more for exclusive access to live video. Have your questions read and answered on the air and more. Till next time, may the flying spaghetti monster be with you.